Today, I'm really excited to announce a new partnership that I've established with a consulting firm called Telos Institute. And they've been around for 25 plus years. Rick and Amy Simmons started it back, and they wrote a book about their work called Unleashed, which talks about the power of liminal spaces for transformation and breakthroughs and changing things up and actually expressing more capacity as a leader. Liminality meaning the space of uncertainty and the unknown. And so we're always falling into spaces of liminality. Most of the time it's against our will, it's involuntary, meaning a change in the economy or a new regulation prevents our business from doing certain work, or a change in the market dynamics, competition, or issues with retention. People leave that we were expecting that would stay for a long time, or a new leadership approach, that a new style that comes into the company and changes everything up. And so we have to sort of, liminality is foisted upon us involuntarily. And Rick and Amy propose that if the liminality is actually the required circumstances for growth and transformation and breakthroughs. And so instead of letting it happen to us as a passive reactionary experience, if we proactively create liminal spaces that break us out of our typical habits and routines and give us a chance to rethink the way we do things and re-feel what it means to be a leader and step into new ways of being, then we can intentionally engender our own leadership development in a way that's much more exciting, right? Because we get to do it for ourselves and not because it's forced upon us. And also we can stay ahead of the curve. So this company, Telos Institute, was founded in Cleveland, and it's worked with all different companies in helping them in their leaders and any change processes be more effective. And in recent years, they've established something called the Vertical Frontiers Leadership Program. And the reason I'm excited about this is that my primary specialization as a coach over the past 7 years, and I've been learning about this method for the last 15 to 17 years, is vertical leadership development. And vertical leadership development is in contrast to horizontal leadership and development, which most leadership development is horizontal, meaning you send a leader to a one-off workshop on how to effectively communicate, or you send your supervisors to how to give one-on-ones or to do performance reviews, or you send an emerging leader to learn about all the policies and procedures of the company. And horizontal leadership is about giving more skills and knowledge, which is really important. But vertical leadership is about developing a leader's capacity to know how to employ those skills and knowledge, knowing how and when to employ those skills and knowledge. And vertical development has been researched for the past 50, 60 years with thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. And there's been a trend, there's a pattern that emerged that has shown that leaders go through sequential, predictable stages of development. And a simplified version of it is earlier stages are the expert stage, where I'm all about doing things the right way by the book and by the expertise that I've been trained in and certified in. That's the expert stage. But then the next stage that we grow into after we realize that the expert stage is actually very limited and things are more complex and require me to step into new behaviors, new capacities that aren't really defined yet. And it's more about a larger system and organizational environment and my interest in achieving larger company goals, organizational goals that require me to let go of that expertise, that expert level, and move into a wider, deeper level of leadership, new stage, which we call achiever stage, where again, it's more about what is my overall goal and objective, and I set the strategy based on everything I can learn and the data and the rigorous strategic efforts to get to a goal, whether or not I'm certified or have the credentials or an authority in any particular thing. It's not about that at the achiever stage. I can see a broader, wider angle, and I can see larger, longer time horizons. So instead of at the expert stage, a lot of times we can genuinely see, months or maybe a year ahead of time, and we're genuinely considering, the impact over that time frame. The achiever stage actually can anticipate and imagine beyond that time frame 3 years, 5 years, sometimes even 10 years, and look at what are the overall impacts over the long term. Even the achiever stage, though, at some point becomes limited when we realize that external measurable goals are not the entire puzzle, that there's something else happening as a leader. There's something invisible or less or more subtle that is occurring that is not accountable by merely looking at objective metrics and establishing predictable, goals that we all want to march toward and achieve. That there's an invisible sense of culture. There's interiority of people's complex human experiences that make it that humans are not simply cogs in a machine or spokes in a wheel, that simply are mechanical processes that move towards goals in a predictable fashion. But the human being is a complex organism, complex system that has feelings that impact things, that have beliefs that impact their actions, that have non-rational knowing, intuitive knowing. And that culture, as one of the famous CEO said, Jack Welch, I believe it was, culture eats strategy for lunch. That's the next stage of development that's coming from the next stage it's called catalyst. And the catalyst is where as a leader, I start to see the invisible dynamics at play, the underlying cultural norms, attitudes, beliefs that enact any given strategic initiative. And that there's a complex dynamic system at play to where instead of just trying to predict and anticipate and plan out our achievements and our goals, as a catalyst, I can set the direction, but really my intention is to foster the conditions where people can increasingly become resilient and effective in responding to what they sense in the moment along the way to that strategic vision or direction. So catalysts are much more in tune with the complex system dynamics. And according to research by Bill Torbert and Associates, those that are at catalyst and later, the later stage leaders, are fewer in number, but disproportionately responsible for enacting transformation and innovation in their companies and organizational environments. So what does that say? That leaders who have done vertical development and that have moved from expert to achiever to catalyst are more likely to enact transformation. They're more effective at leading change. And also there's been research that shows from the Center for Creative Leadership that in complex, volatile, uncertain, ambiguous environments, VUCA environments, which is now what's more present than ever, that late stage leaders, those that are more vertically developed, are more effective at responding in that complexity in those VUCA environments. And there's also been research that shows those with both and mindsets outperform leaders with either or mindsets. And as we develop vertically, our ability to see both and actually increases. So why am I giving you this whole overview of vertical development? Well, this is the kind of coaching that I've been doing the last 7 years. But now I've found a firm that specializes in this, that has packaged a program in a way that makes it very accessible and very immediately applicable and practical for leaders to go through this process. And they've taken Bill Joyner's leadership agility framework, which takes those 3 stages, those 3 major stages. There's more stages of development, but these are the 3 major ones that are most available in organizations. So they've taken this model and they've made it accessible for the average manager, and they've packaged it in a way that is simple, it's concise, it's meaningful, it's coherent, it's sticky, it's easy to remember, and they use what they call leadership aperture. So think of a camera, and you have an aperture, which is where you can adjust the lens to move in or move out. So you can have a narrow aperture, which narrows your focus down on something discrete, tangible, close up, immediate. You can widen your aperture as a leader and see the big picture, a longer time frame, a larger set of stakeholders. And these correlate with the different stages of development. But any leader can learn how to widen and narrow their aperture at any given moment based on what's needed. And so they call it, they're developing leaders with range and wisdom. Range is the ability to widen and narrow the aperture. So for example, if the pipes burst at my company, a narrow aperture reaction or response would be, oh, let's fix the pipes. Like right now, let's go fix the pipes, patch them up. A medium aperture approach might be more strategic in addition to the narrow aperture approach, but might be like, okay, let's look at what happened to the system, and is this a pattern? Is this a trend? What happened such that these pipes are so vulnerable? And how do we strategically optimize our system to make it so that doesn't happen as much? But a wider aperture leader, maybe a catalyst leader, can do all of those things, but would look at the entire system and look at, why are we using these kind of pipes? How much water are we using? And do we need really to have one person responsible for fixing pipes? Or can we have a whole team with the skills that can react and respond to be fixing pipes at any given point? So they would rethink the entire system and look at alternative ways to up-level and optimize the system. And they'd also look at it from the long term. So maybe they might create a new position called cross-functional training specialist, whose responsibility would be to make sure that every team has somebody on the team that it knows how to fix a pipe. It's a really kind of a silly example, but it's illustrating the point, right? And instead of, for example, one person responsible for the whole company, that everyone puts all the accountability on to fix all the pipes, and they can't possibly do it because there's way too much to deal with. Actually, there's a distributed leadership and a distributed capacity that a catalyst might generate in that company. So this is called range, right? Small, medium, wide aperture. And when we talk about wisdom, we talk about when to narrow my lens and when to widen my lens or my aperture. So knowing when to adjust the aperture is about wisdom. And so the Vertical Frontiers leadership program it trains leaders to do precisely that. And it's been so popular. It's been widely applauded, and companies like United Airlines and Benjamin Moore Paints and Swagelock and the list goes on of satisfied, happy customers. So I'm really excited to be on the expert panel of Telos Institute, who has their Vertical Frontiers program. And it actually takes my vertical development work to the next level because, again, it sort of packages it in a way that makes it radically accessible as an open enrollment program for any company to send 1 or 2 or 10 of their employees to participate in. And I'll just make one more comment. Why does this matter? Well, companies can continue to do horizontal leadership only and give leaders tools and simple formulas for responding to needs, but it won't foster necessarily a learning culture. It won't foster a culture of heightened communication. It won't foster a culture of adaptive leadership. It won't foster transformational change in leaders so that they can develop their capacities to see more, to be bigger, to make a larger impact, to see a bigger picture, to incorporate more people's needs and perceptions and perspectives in the longer term sustainable goals of the company. And now with so much complexity and so much uncertainty with the tariffs and with the climate change situation and with just global geopolitical economic warfare and the volatility of the world, more and more companies need to develop leaders who can respond with range and wisdom to be able to know how to lead in the way that's needed in the situation that they're in. So I hope to be continuing to work with Telos, and I look forward to working, with my previous clients, my past, present, and future clients, and incorporating Telos's leadership framework and partnering with them going forward.